Welcome to the Stoic Mind Mastery channel. Dear friends, imagine when you enter your 60 seconds or 70 seconds, but still maintain the intellectual dynamism and joy that life brings. That would be great, right? For many people, old age can mean declining health and loss of independence. But there are also lucky people who not only live long, but also live a meaningful and fulfilling life. Have you ever wondered how to become one of those special people? Do they have any secret? Let's explore in this video. The late afternoon sun bathed the small suburban house in a warm golden light. It was a modest home, tucked away at the end of a quiet street, surrounded by a lush garden that seemed to overflow with life. The garden was a labor of love, tended to daily by John and Mary, a couple who had spent over 4 decades building a life together. The flowers, vibrant and colourful, stood as a testament to their shared dedication, while the vegetable patch in the corner reflected their practical, down-to-earth nature. Inside the house, the aroma of freshly brewed tea filled the air. John, a 70-year-old retired history teacher, was seated at the kitchen table, carefully flipping through an old photo album. His hands, weathered by time, moved slowly but deliberately as he turned each page. The photos captured moments from their life together. Family vacations, birthdays, graduations, and quiet afternoons spent in the very garden that now bloomed outside. Each image told a story, a fragment of a life well lived. Across the room, Mary, 65 years old and still full of energy, was busy preparing dinner. She moved with a quiet efficiency, humming a soft tune as she chopped vegetables. Her silver-streaked hair was tied back in a loose bun, and her face, though lined with age, radiated warmth and kindness. Every so often she glanced over at John, her eyes softening as she watched him lose himself in the memories of their shared past. "Do you remember this one?" John asked, holding up a photo of the two of them standing on a beach, their arms wrapped around each other. The picture was faded, but their smiles were as bright as the sunlit waves behind them. Mary turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and walked over to take a closer look. "Of course I do," she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "That was our trip to the coast, right after you got your first teaching job. We didn't have much money back then, but we were so happy." John chuckled. "I think we spent more time laughing at how terrible that old car of ours was than we did enjoying the beach. Remember how it broke down halfway there?" Mary laughed, the sound light and melodic. "How could I forget? We had to push it to the nearest gas station. But you know, I wouldn't trade those days for anything." Their laughter filled the room, a reminder of the bond they had built over the years. It was a bond forged through love, patience, and a shared determination to face life's challenges together. But now, as they entered their golden years, they found themselves facing a new set of challenges, ones they hadn't fully anticipated. John and Mary had raised 2 children, both of whom were now grown and living their own lives. Their son, Michael, was a software engineer in a bustling city several hours away, while their daughter, Emily, had moved overseas to pursue her dream of becoming a writer. Though they were proud of their children's accomplishments, the house often felt too quiet without the sound of their laughter or the chaos of their youthful energy. At first, the silence was a welcome change. After years of juggling work, parenting, and household responsibilities, John and Mary relished the peace and quiet. But as the months turned into years, the stillness began to feel heavy. There were days when Mary would find herself standing in the doorway of Michael's old room, her fingers brushing against the dusty bookshelf. Or when John would sit in the garden, staring at the empty swing set that once echoed with the sound of Emily's giggles. "It's strange, isn't it?" Mary said one evening as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "We spent so many years wishing for a moment of peace, and now that we have it, I find myself missing the noise." John nodded, his gaze fixed on the fading light. "I know what you mean. It's like we spent all our energy building a life for them, and now that they're gone, we're not quite sure what to do with ourselves." Mary reached over and took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "We'll figure it out," she said. "We always do." Determined not to let the quietness of their empty nest define them, John and Mary decided to approach this new phase of life with the same sense of purpose and curiosity that had carried them through their younger years. They made a pact to not just exist, but to truly live. Their first step was to focus on their health. John, who had always been more of a bookworm than an athlete, started taking morning walks around the neighborhood. At first, his pace was slow, and his joints protested with every step. But over time, he began to enjoy the rhythm of his walks, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the chirping of birds, and the occasional wave from a neighbor. Mary, on the other hand, decided to join a local yoga class. It was something she had always been curious about, but had never found the time to try. The first few sessions were challenging. Her body wasn't as flexible as it used to be, but she found joy in the process of learning and improving. Plus, the class introduced her to a group of like-minded women who quickly became her friends. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, John looked at Mary and said, "You know, I think this is the healthiest I've felt in years." Mary smiled, her eyes twinkling. "Me too. It's amazing what a little effort can do." As they settled into their new routines, John and Mary began to rediscover the joy in life's simple pleasures. They spent more time in their garden, planting new flowers and experimenting with different vegetables. John, who had always been a history buff, started reading more books and even began writing short essays about his favorite historical events. Mary, inspired by her yoga class, took up painting, a hobby she had dabbled in as a young woman but had long since abandoned. One afternoon, as Mary was painting a landscape of their garden, John walked over and peered at her work. "That's beautiful," he said, genuinely impressed. Mary blushed. "It's not much, but it makes me happy." "Well, I think it's wonderful," John said. "You've got a real talent." Encouraged by his words, Mary decided to hang her paintings in the house, turning their home into a gallery of her creativity. John, in turn, began sharing his essays with Mary, who always listened with rapt attention and offered thoughtful feedback. Though they still missed their children and the busyness of their younger years, John and Mary found that this new chapter of life was filled with its own kind of beauty. They had more time to focus on each other, to explore their interests and to appreciate the world around them. And while they knew that aging would bring its own set of challenges, they were determined to face them together, with the same love and resilience that had carried them through everything else. One evening, as they sat in their garden watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think we're doing pretty well." Mary smiled, her hand resting on his. "I think so too," she said. "And the best part is, we're just getting started." And with that, they raised their cups of tea in a quiet toast to the life they had built, the memories they had made, and the adventures that still lay ahead. For John and Mary, the first step in their journey to living fully in old age was prioritizing their health. They both understood that a strong, healthy body was the foundation for a fulfilling life, especially as they grew older. But they also knew that health wasn't just about physical fitness, it was about nurturing their minds and spirits as well. Together they embarked on a mission to improve their well-being, one small step at a time. John had never been much of a cook. For most of their marriage, Mary had been the one to prepare meals, while John was content to enjoy her delicious creations. But after retiring, John decided it was time to step into the kitchen and learn something new. He saw cooking not just as a way to contribute to their household, but also as an opportunity to explore healthier eating habits. At first, his attempts were far from perfect. One evening, he decided to surprise Mary by making dinner. He followed a recipe for vegetable soup, but accidentally added twice as much salt as the recipe called for. When Mary took her first sip, she burst out laughing. "John," she said, trying to keep a straight face, "are you trying to preserve me like a pickle?" John laughed along with her, though he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. "Well," he said, "I guess I'm still learning." Despite the occasional mishap, John was determined to improve. He started watching cooking tutorials online and experimenting with simple, healthy recipes. Over time, he began to enjoy the process of preparing meals, finding it both relaxing and rewarding. Mary, who had always been the family's primary cook, was delighted to see her husband take an interest in something new. One evening, John prepared a dinner that surprised even himself: grilled chicken with a side of roasted vegetables and a fresh salad. As they sat down to eat, Mary took a bite and smiled. "This is delicious," she said. "I think you've officially earned the title of chef." John beamed with pride. "Well, I had a good teacher," he replied. Their focus on healthy eating extended beyond the kitchen. They started visiting the local farmers market every weekend, picking out fresh produce and chatting with the vendors. These outings became a cherished ritual, a way to connect with their community and each other. They also began experimenting with new ingredients, incorporating more whole grains, lean proteins, and fresh vegetables into their meals. In addition to improving their diet, John and Mary made a conscious effort to stay active. They both knew that regular exercise was essential for maintaining their physical health. But they also discovered that it was a great way to spend time together and boost their mood. John started with something simple: morning walks around the neighborhood. At first, his pace was slow and his joints protested with every step. But as the days went by, he began to feel stronger and more energized. He started walking longer distances, exploring new routes, and even stopping to chat with neighbors along the way. Mary, inspired by John's commitment, decided to join a local yoga class. She'd always been curious about yoga, but had never found the time to try it. The first few sessions were challenging. Her body wasn't as flexible as it used to be, but she found joy in the process of learning and improving. Plus, the class introduced her to a group of like-minded women who quickly became her friends. One day, Mary convinced John to join her for a yoga session. At first, he was hesitant. "I'm not exactly flexible," he joked. But Mary's encouragement won him over, and he agreed to give it a try. The first class was a humbling experience for John. He struggled to keep up with the poses and spent most of the time wobbling on his mat. But the supportive atmosphere of the class and Mary's gentle encouragement kept him coming back. Over time, he began to see improvements in his balance and flexibility, and he even started to enjoy the meditative aspect of yoga. "Who would have thought," John said one evening after class, "that I'd be doing yoga at my age?" Mary smiled. "It's never too late to try something new," she said, "and besides, you're doing great." For John and Mary, the journey to better health wasn't just about the results, it was about the process. They found joy in the small, everyday moments, the laughter they shared in the kitchen, the quiet conversations during their walks, and the sense of accomplishment they felt after a yoga session. One particularly memorable day, John decided to try his hand at baking. He had found a recipe for whole grain bread and was determined to make it from scratch. The process was messy, flour ended up all over the kitchen and the dough didn't rise as much as it was supposed to. But when the bread came out of the oven, it filled the house with a warm, comforting aroma. Mary took a bite and smiled. "It's a little dense," she said, "but it's delicious." John laughed. "Well, it's a work in progress," he said, "but at least it's healthy." Their efforts to improve their health brought them closer together, strengthening their bond and giving them a sense of purpose. They discovered that taking care of their bodies wasn't just about staying healthy, it was about finding joy in the process and supporting each other along the way. As they continued their journey, John and Mary learned an important lesson. Health is about balance. It's about nourishing your body with good food, staying active, and taking time to rest and recharge. It's about finding what works for you and embracing the journey, imperfections and all. One evening, as they sat together in their garden sipping tea and watching the sunset, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think this is the healthiest I've felt in years." Mary smiled, her hand resting on his. "Me too," she said, "and the best part is we're doing it together." Their journey to better health was just the beginning of their larger mission to live fully in their golden years. With each step they took, whether it was trying a new recipe, exploring a new walking route, or mastering a yoga pose, they were reminded that it's never too late to start taking care of yourself. And in the process, they discovered that a healthy body truly does lead to a happy soul. As John and Mary embraced their golden years, they realized that one of the most empowering aspects of aging was maintaining their independence. They were determined to prove to themselves and to each other that they could still take care of their home, their needs, and their lives. For them, independence wasn't just about practicality, it was about preserving their sense of purpose and self-worth. This chapter of their journey was filled with small victories, moments of frustration, and a deep sense of pride in their ability to adapt and thrive. One of the first challenges John and Mary faced was learning to manage the household without relying on their children or outside help. Over the years, they had grown accustomed to their son Michael fixing things around the house during his visits, or their daughter Emily helping with errands when she was home. But now, with their children living far away, John and Mary decided it was time to take full ownership of their daily lives. John, who had always been a bit of a handyman, took pride in fixing things around the house. One afternoon, he noticed that the kitchen faucet was leaking. In the past, he might have called a plumber, but this time he decided to tackle the problem himself. Armed with a toolbox and a YouTube tutorial, John spent the better part of the afternoon under the sink, muttering to himself as he worked. Mary peeked into the kitchen, her hands on her hips. "How's it going, Mr. Fix-It?" she teased. John grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "I think I've got it figured out. Just give me a few more minutes." When he finally tightened the last bolt and turned the faucet on, the leak was gone. John stood up, his back aching but his face beaming with pride. "There," he said. "Good as new." Mary clapped her hands. "Well done. I knew you could do it." Moments like these reminded John that he was still capable of solving problems and taking care of his home. Each small victory boosted his confidence and reinforced his belief that age was no barrier to independence. While John focused on repairs and maintenance, Mary found her own ways to embrace independence. One of her biggest challenges was learning to navigate the city on her own. In the past, she had always relied on John to drive her to appointments or run errands, but now she wanted to prove to herself that she could get around without his help. One morning, Mary decided to take the bus to the local market. It had been years since she'd used public transportation, and she was nervous about getting lost or missing her stop. But she was determined to try. As she boarded the bus, she clutched her shopping bag tightly and double-checked the route map. The ride was bumpy, and the unfamiliar faces around her made her feel a little uneasy. But when the bus pulled up to the market, Mary felt a surge of pride. She had done it. At the market, she took her time picking out fresh produce and chatting with the vendors. On the ride home, she even struck up a conversation with a fellow passenger, a woman around her age who shared tips about the best stalls at the market. When Mary walked through the front door, her face was glowing with excitement. "I did it," she announced to John. "I took the bus all by myself." John smiled, setting down the book he was reading. "I never doubted you for a second," he said. "You're braver than you think."
From that day on, Mary made a habit of taking the bus to explore different parts of the city.
Each trip was a small adventure, and with every journey she felt more confident and capable. While John and Mary were proud of their individual accomplishments, they also found joy in tackling challenges together. One of their biggest projects was restoring an old wooden chair that had been sitting in their garage for years. The chair had sentimental value. It had belonged to Mary's grandmother, but it was in such poor condition that they had almost given up on it. One afternoon, John suggested they try to restore it. "It'll be a fun project," he said, "and who knows, maybe we can bring it back to life." Mary agreed, and the two of them set to work. John handled the sanding and repairs, while Mary focused on painting and adding decorative touches. The process was messy and time-consuming, and there were moments when they both felt frustrated, especially when the chair's legs refused to stay even. But as they worked side by side, they found themselves laughing at their mistakes and encouraging each other to keep going. When the chair was finally finished, it looked beautiful, a perfect blend of John's craftsmanship and Mary's artistic flair. They placed the chair in their living room, where it quickly became Mary's favorite spot to sit and read. Every time she looked at it, she felt a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. For John and Mary, independence wasn't about doing everything perfectly, it was about trying, learning, and growing. They discovered that the act of taking care of themselves brought a sense of fulfillment that no amount of outside help could replace. One evening, as they sat together in their garden, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think we're doing pretty well for a couple of old-timers." Mary laughed, her eyes twinkling. "Speak for yourself," she said. "I feel younger than ever." John chuckled. "Well, I think we've proven that we can still handle just about anything." Mary nodded, her hand resting on his. "And the best part is we're doing it together." Their journey to independence was a reminder that age is not a limitation, it's an opportunity to rediscover what you're capable of. With each challenge they faced, John and Mary grew stronger, more confident, and more connected. They learned that independence wasn't just about taking care of their physical needs, it was about nurturing their spirits and proving to themselves that they could still live life on their own terms. And as they looked ahead to the future, they knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them with the same determination and resilience that had carried them through so many years together. For John and Mary, independence was more than a goal, it was a way of life. As John and Mary continued their journey to living fully in their golden years, they realized that managing stress was just as important as maintaining their physical health and independence. Life, even in retirement, came with its own set of challenges, aches and pains, moments of loneliness, and the occasional frustration of not being able to do things as easily as they once could. But instead of letting stress overwhelm them, John and Mary decided to approach it with patience, mindfulness, and a commitment to finding peace in their hearts. For John, one of the biggest sources of stress was his body's limitations. As a former teacher who had always been active and energetic, he found it frustrating when his arthritis flared up or when he couldn't complete tasks as quickly as he used to. Simple activities like gardening or fixing things around the house sometimes left him feeling exhausted, and he struggled with the idea that his body wasn't as strong as it once was. Mary, on the other hand, often felt the weight of loneliness. While she and John had a strong bond, there were moments when the house felt too quiet, especially on days when John was busy with his own projects. She missed the chaos of their children's younger years, the laughter, the noise, and the constant activity that had once filled their home. Though she was proud of Michael and Emily for building their own lives, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness when she thought about how far away they were. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, John sighed and rubbed his knees. "I hate feeling like this," he said. "It's like my body is betraying me." Mary looked up from her book and placed a hand on his arm. "I know it's hard," she said gently, "but you're still the same John I've always known. You're strong in so many ways." "And you?" John asked, noticing the distant look in her eyes. "What's been on your mind?" Mary hesitated for a moment before admitting, "I miss the kids. I miss the noise, the busyness. Sometimes the quiet feels too quiet." John nodded, understanding her feelings. "We've both got our struggles," he said, "but maybe we can find a way to handle them together." One of the first steps John and Mary took to manage their stress was exploring meditation. It was Mary who suggested it after reading an article about the benefits of mindfulness for older adults. At first, John was skeptical. "You want me to sit still and do nothing?" he joked. "I'm not sure I'm cut out for that." But Mary convinced him to give it a try. They started with just 5 minutes a day, sitting quietly in their garden and focusing on their breath. At first, it felt awkward. John's mind kept wandering to his to-do list, and Mary found it hard to sit still. But over time, they began to notice the benefits. One morning after a particularly peaceful meditation session, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. It's like my mind feels lighter." Mary smiled. "I feel the same way. It's nice to just pause and breathe for a while." As they continued their practice, meditation became a daily ritual. They found that it helped them stay calm and centered, even on difficult days. For John, it was a way to let go of his frustration with his body and focus on the present moment. For Mary, it was a chance to quiet her mind and find peace in the stillness. Another way John and Mary managed their stress was by spending time in nature. Their garden, which they had lovingly tended for years, became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the pressures of daily life and reconnect with the world around them. Mary found particular comfort in gardening. She loved the feeling of her hands in the soil, the satisfaction of planting seeds and watching them grow. On days when she felt lonely or overwhelmed, she would head outside and lose herself in the rhythm of weeding, watering, and pruning. The act of caring for her plants gave her a sense of purpose and reminded her of the beauty of life's cycles. John, meanwhile, found peace in simply sitting in the garden and observing. He would watch the birds flit from tree to tree, listen to the rustle of leaves in the wind, and marvel at the vibrant colors of the flowers. One afternoon, as he sat on the bench under their favorite oak tree, he turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think this garden is the best thing we've ever created. It's like our little piece of heaven." Mary smiled, wiping dirt from her hands. "It's more than a garden," she said. "It's a reminder that even in the quiet moments, there's so much life around us."
John and Mary also discovered that one of the best ways to manage stress was through laughter.
They made a conscious effort to find humor in everyday situations, whether it was John's clumsy attempts at yoga or Mary's tendency to misplace her reading glasses. One evening, as they were watching an old comedy movie, John started laughing so hard that tears streamed down his face. "I haven't laughed like this in years," he said, catching his breath. Mary grinned. "It feels good, doesn't it? I think we need more of this in our lives." From that day on, they made a point to seek out moments of joy and humor. They watched funny shows, shared silly stories, and even started a tradition of telling each other a joke every morning. The laughter not only lightened their mood, but also brought them closer together. Perhaps the most important part of managing stress was the way John and Mary supported each other. They made a pact to be honest about their feelings and to listen without judgment. On days when John felt frustrated with his arthritis, Mary would remind him of all the things he could still do. And on days when Mary felt lonely, John would sit with her and share stories from their past, reminding her of the love and memories they had built together. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, John said, "You know, I think we're doing pretty well. Life isn't always easy, but we're figuring it out." Mary nodded, her hand resting on his. "We are," she said, "and as long as we have each other, I think we'll be okay." Through meditation, nature, laughter, and mutual support, John and Mary found ways to manage their stress and cultivate peace in their hearts. They learned that while life would always have its challenges, they had the tools and the resilience to face them together. For John and Mary, stress wasn't something to fear. It was an opportunity to grow, to adapt, and to find strength in each other. And as they looked out at their garden, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, they felt a deep sense of calm. Life, they realized, was not about avoiding stress, but about finding peace in the midst of it. And in that moment, they knew they had found their balance. As John and Mary continued their journey of living fully in their golden years, they realized that keeping their minds sharp was just as important as maintaining their physical health and emotional well-being. They believed that learning was a lifelong process, and even in their later years, they were determined to challenge their minds, explore new interests, and embrace the joy of discovery. For them, staying mentally active wasn't just about preventing cognitive decline. It was about staying curious, engaged, and connected to the world around them. John had always been a history enthusiast. As a retired history teacher, he had spent decades sharing his love for the past with his students. But after retiring, he found himself missing the intellectual stimulation of teaching. He missed the lively discussions, the thrill of uncovering new facts, and the satisfaction of helping others understand the lessons of history. One day, while browsing the internet, John stumbled upon an online course about ancient civilizations. The course promised to explore the mysteries of the Egyptian pyramids, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, and the cultural achievements of the Mayans. Intrigued, John decided to enroll. At first, he was nervous about using the computer for something so complex. "I'm not exactly tech-savvy," he admitted to Mary. "What if I can't figure it out?" Mary smiled and patted his hand. "You'll do just fine," she said, "and if you get stuck, I'm here to help." With Mary's encouragement, John dove into the course. He spent hours watching lectures, taking notes, and participating in online discussions with other history enthusiasts. The experience reignited his passion for learning and gave him a sense of purpose. He even started writing short essays about the topics he was studying, which he shared with Mary over dinner. One evening, as he finished reading an essay about the fall of the Roman Empire, Mary clapped her hands. "That was fascinating," she said. "You should think about sharing these with more people." John chuckled. "Maybe I will," he said, "but for now, I'm just happy to be learning again." While John immersed himself in history, Mary decided to revisit a passion she had set aside long ago, painting. As a young woman, she had loved to paint landscapes and still life scenes, but the demands of raising a family and managing a household had left little time for creative pursuits. Now, with more free time on her hands, she decided it was the perfect opportunity to pick up a paintbrush again. Mary started small, buying a set of watercolors and a sketch pad. At first, her strokes were hesitant, and her paintings didn't turn out the way she had envisioned. But she reminded herself that the process was more important than the result. It doesn't have to be perfect, she told herself. It just has to make me happy. As she practiced, Mary's confidence grew. She began experimenting with different techniques and styles, drawing inspiration from the garden she and John had nurtured together. Her paintings became more vibrant and expressive, capturing the beauty of the flowers, the play of sunlight on the leaves, and the peacefulness of their outdoor sanctuary. One afternoon, as Mary was putting the finishing touches on a painting of their garden, John walked in and stopped to admire her work. "That's beautiful," he said, genuinely impressed. "You've got real talent." Mary blushed. "It's not much," she said, "but it makes me happy." "Well, I think it's wonderful," John replied. "You should hang it up." Encouraged by John's support, Mary began displaying her paintings around the house. Each one was a reminder of her creativity and the joy she found in expressing herself. Over time, she even started sharing her work with friends and neighbors who praised her talent and encouraged her to keep going. While John and Mary pursued their individual interests, they also found ways to learn together. One of their favorite activities was solving crossword puzzles. Every morning, they would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and tackle the day's puzzle from the newspaper. The activity challenged their minds and sparked lively debates about obscure words and trivia. "Are you sure that's how you spell it?" John would ask, raising an eyebrow. "Of course I'm sure," Mary would reply with a grin. "I'm always right, remember?" Their playful banter made the activity even more enjoyable, and they often found themselves laughing at their mistakes or marveling at how much they had learned. In addition to crosswords, John and Mary started attending local lectures and workshops together. One weekend, they went to a talk about astronomy at the community center. The speaker, a retired astrophysicist, explained the wonders of the universe in a way that left them both in awe. As they walked home that evening, John looked up at the night sky and said, "It's amazing, isn't it? There's so much out there we don't know." Mary nodded. "And so much left to learn," she said. "I'm glad we're doing this together." For John and Mary, the act of learning wasn't just about acquiring knowledge, it was about staying curious and engaged with the world. They discovered that every new skill, every new fact, and every new experience added richness to their lives. Learning gave them a sense of purpose and reminded them that age was no barrier to growth. One day, as they sat in their garden, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think we're proving that it's never too late to learn something new." Mary smiled, her eyes twinkling. "I think so too," she said, "and the best part is we're having fun while we're at it." Their journey to keep their minds sharp was a testament to their resilience and their love of life. Whether it was through history, art, puzzles, or lectures, John and Mary embraced every opportunity to learn and grow. They knew that as long as they stayed curious, their minds would remain vibrant and alive. And as they looked ahead to the future, they felt a renewed sense of excitement. There was still so much to discover, so much to explore, and so much to learn. For John and Mary, the journey of lifelong learning was just beginning. As John and Mary embraced their golden years, they came to understand a profound truth. Life is richer and more meaningful when shared with others. While they cherished their time together as a couple, they also recognized the importance of maintaining and building social connections. They knew that staying socially active was not only good for their emotional well-being, but also essential for their mental and physical health. After all, as the old saying goes, no one is an island. This chapter of their journey was about reaching out, reconnecting, and finding joy in the company of others. One of the first steps John and Mary took to strengthen their social connections was reaching out to old friends. Over the years, life had taken them in different directions, and they had lost touch with many people who had once been an important part of their lives. Now, with more time on their hands, they decided to rekindle those relationships. One afternoon, Mary found an old address book tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through its pages, she came across the name of her childhood best friend, Susan. They hadn't spoken in years, but Mary felt a sudden urge to reconnect. With John's encouragement, she picked up the phone and dialed the number. To her delight, Susan answered, and the two women quickly fell into an easy conversation, as if no time had passed. They reminisced about their school days, shared updates about their families, and made plans to meet for coffee. When Mary hung up the phone, her face was glowing with excitement. "I can't believe how much I've missed her," she said. "It feels so good to reconnect." John smiled. "I think it's wonderful," he said. "Maybe I should reach out to some of my old friends too." Inspired by Mary's experience, John decided to call his former colleague and fishing buddy, Tom. The two men hadn't spoken since Tom moved to another town years ago, but their conversation was warm and filled with laughter. By the end of the call, they had made plans to meet up for a fishing trip. Reconnecting with old friends brought a sense of nostalgia and joy to John and Mary's lives. It reminded them of the importance of nurturing relationships and the happiness that comes from sharing memories with people who know you well. In addition to reconnecting with old friends, John and Mary also made an effort to build new friendships. They realized that retirement was an opportunity to meet people who shared their interests and passions. Mary joined a local art club, where she met other amateur painters who encouraged and inspired her. The group met once a week to paint together, share tips, and critique each other's work. Mary quickly formed a bond with several members of the group, and their conversations often extended beyond art to include stories about their lives and families. One day, after a particularly lively session, Mary invited a few of her new friends over for tea. As they sat in the garden, chatting and laughing, Mary felt a deep sense of gratitude. "It's amazing how much we have in common," she said. "I feel like I've known them forever." Meanwhile, John joined a local history club where he found kindred spirits who shared his love of the past. The group organized lectures, book discussions, and field trips to historical sites. John especially enjoyed the lively debates that often broke out during their meetings, and he appreciated the opportunity to share his knowledge and learn from others. One evening, after returning from a club meeting, John said to Mary, I didn't realize how much I missed being part of a group. It feels good to connect with people who share my interests." Mary nodded. "It's like we're building a whole new community," she said. "And it's wonderful." Another way John and Mary strengthened their social connections was by giving back to their community. They both believed that helping others was one of the most meaningful ways to stay connected and make a difference. Mary began volunteering at the local library, where she helped organize events and read stories to children. She loved seeing the joy on the kids' faces as they listened to her animated storytelling, and she found fulfillment in knowing that she was fostering a love of reading in the next generation. John, on the other hand, decided to volunteer at a community garden. He enjoyed working alongside other volunteers to plant, weed, and harvest vegetables that were donated to local food banks. The physical activity was good for his body, and the camaraderie he shared with the other volunteers was good for his soul. One day, as they sat together in their garden, John said, I think volunteering has been one of the best decisions we've made. It's not just about helping others, it's about being part of something bigger than ourselves." Mary smiled. "I couldn't agree more," she said. "It's a reminder that we're all connected." While John and Mary were busy building friendships and giving back to their community, they also made a conscious effort to stay connected with their family. Though their children, Michael and Emily, lived far away, they made it a priority to keep in touch through phone calls, video chats, and visits. Every Sunday, they had a standing video call with Michael and Emily, during which they shared updates, told stories, and laughed together. Mary often showed off her latest paintings, while John regaled them with tales of his history club adventures. During one call, Emily said, "You two are busier than I am. It's so inspiring to see how active and engaged you are." John chuckled. "Well, we've got to keep up with you young folks," he said, "but we miss you both. When are you coming to visit?" The calls helped bridge the distance and reminded John and Mary that, no matter how far apart they were, their family bond remained strong. For John and Mary, building and maintaining social connections was about more than just avoiding loneliness. It was about enriching their lives and creating a sense of belonging. Whether they were reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, volunteering, or staying in touch with family, they found joy and fulfillment in the relationships they nurtured. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Mary said, "You know, I think the best part of life is the people we share it with." John nodded, his hand resting on hers. "You're right," he said. "No one is an island. And I'm glad we've got each other and so many wonderful people in our lives." Their journey to strengthen their social connections was a reminder that life is meant to be shared. Through their efforts, John and Mary discovered that the key to a happy and meaningful life wasn't just about what they did, it was about who they did it with. And in the company of friends, family, and their community, they found a sense of purpose, joy, and love that made every day brighter. As John and Mary journeyed through their golden years, one thing remained constant: their love and companionship. After more than 40 years of marriage, they had weathered life's ups and downs together, and their bond had only grown stronger with time. For them, love wasn't just about grand gestures or fleeting romance. It was about the quiet moments, the shared laughter, and the unwavering support they gave each other every single day. This chapter of their lives was a celebration of their enduring partnership, a reminder that no matter what challenges they faced, they would always have each other. One of the things John and Mary cherished most about their relationship was the comfort of their daily routines. Over the years, they had developed a rhythm to their days that brought them a sense of stability and peace. Every morning they would sit together at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. John would tackle the crossword puzzle while Mary flipped through the lifestyle section, occasionally sharing interesting tidbits she came across. "Did you know that laughter can boost your immune system?" Mary said one morning, looking up from an article. John chuckled. "Well, I guess we're in good shape then. You make me laugh every day." Mary smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "And you make me laugh too," she said. "I guess we're each other's medicine." These small, everyday moments were the foundation of their love. They didn't need grand adventures or extravagant gestures to feel connected. Just being together was enough. As they grew older, John and Mary faced their fair share of challenges, from health issues to the occasional disagreements that come with spending so much time together. But through it all, they remained each other's greatest source of strength and support. When John's arthritis flared up, making it difficult for him to move around, Mary was always there to help. She would bring him his favorite tea, rub his aching joints, and remind him to take his medication. "You've taken care of me for so many years," she would say. "Now it's my turn to take care of you." Likewise, when Mary had days when she felt lonely or overwhelmed, John was always there to lift her spirits. He would tell her stories from their past, reminding her of all the adventures they had shared, or simply sit with her in silence, holding her hand and letting her know she wasn't alone. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, John said, "You know, I don't think I could do this without you." Mary looked at him, her eyes soft with affection. "You don't have to," she said. "We're in this together always." Even after decades of marriage, John and Mary made an effort to keep the spark of romance alive. They believed that love wasn't something that faded with time, it was something that deepened and evolved. While their idea of romance had changed over the years, they still found ways to show their love for each other in meaningful ways. One evening, John surprised Mary with a candlelit dinner in their garden. He had spent the afternoon preparing her favorite meal, roast chicken with vegetables, and had set the table with their best china and a bouquet of fresh flowers from the garden. When Mary stepped outside and saw the setup, her eyes filled with tears. "John, this is beautiful," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. John smiled, pulling out a chair for her. "I just wanted to remind you how much you mean to me," he said. "After all these years, you're still the love of my life."
As they ate under the stars, reminiscing about their early days together,
Mary felt a warmth in her heart that reminded her of why she had fallen in love with John all those years ago. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the perfect moments, it was about the love and care they showed each other every day. One of the things that brought John and Mary closer was their shared memories. They loved looking through old photo albums, reliving the moments that had shaped their lives together. From their wedding day to family vacations, from the birth of their children to quiet evenings spent at home, each photo told a story of love, laughter, and resilience. One afternoon, as they sat on the couch flipping through an album, Mary pointed to a picture of them standing on a beach, their arms around each other. "Do you remember this?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. John nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "How could I forget? That was the trip where I got sunburned so badly I couldn't move for 2 days." Mary laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And I had to cover you in aloe vera every hour. You were such a baby about it." John chuckled. "Well, I guess that's what love is, taking care of each other even when we're at our worst." Mary looked up at him, her expression soft. "And we've done a pretty good job of that, haven't we?" John kissed her forehead. "We have," he said, "and we always will." As John and Mary reflected on their lives together, they realized that their love had been the anchor that had carried them through every stage of life. It wasn't always easy. There were arguments, hardships, and moments of doubt, but their commitment to each other had never wavered. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, John turned to Mary and said, "You know, I think the best decision I ever made was marrying you." Mary smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "And the best decision I ever made was saying yes." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the golden light of the setting sun casting a warm glow over their faces. In that moment, they didn't need words to express their love. It was there in the way they held hands, in the way they looked at each other, and in the quiet understanding that, no matter what, they would always have each other. For John and Mary, love wasn't about perfection, it was about persistence. It was about showing up for each other every day, through the good times and the bad. It was about finding joy in the little things, supporting each other through challenges and cherishing the moments they shared. As they looked ahead to the future, they knew that life would continue to bring its share of challenges. But they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Their love was a testament to the power of companionship, a reminder that even in the later years of life, love could still be as vibrant and meaningful as ever. And as they sat together, hand in hand, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life they had built, for the memories they had made, and for the love that had carried them through it all. For John and Mary, the greatest gift of all was knowing that no matter what, they would always have each other. As John and Mary reflected on their lives, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for all they had experienced and achieved. They had built a loving family, nurtured a strong marriage, and created a life filled with joy and meaning. But as they entered their golden years, they realized that one of the most fulfilling ways to live was to give back to the community that had supported them throughout their journey. For John and Mary, contributing to the world around them wasn't just an act of kindness, it was a way to find purpose, connect with others, and leave a legacy of love and generosity. John and Mary had always believed in the importance of helping others, but retirement gave them the time and freedom to fully embrace this value. They began by asking themselves a simple question: what can we do to make a difference? For John, the answer lay in education. As a retired history teacher, he had spent his career inspiring young minds, and he wanted to continue that work in some way. Mary, on the other hand, had always been passionate about nurturing creativity and supporting those in need. Together, they decided to explore opportunities to give back in ways that aligned with their passions and skills. One evening, as they sat in their garden discussing their plans, Mary said, "I think the most important thing is to give from the heart. It doesn't matter how big or small our contributions are. What matters is that we're making a difference." John nodded. "You're right," he said, "and I think we'll find that the more we give, the more we'll receive in return." John's first step in giving back was volunteering at a local high school, where he started a mentorship program for students interested in history. Every week, he would meet with a small group of students to discuss historical events, share stories from his teaching days, and help them develop critical thinking skills. At first, John worried that the students might not be interested in what he had to offer. "What if they think I'm just an old man rambling about the past?" he asked Mary one evening. Mary smiled and placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "You have so much wisdom to share," she said, "and I'm sure they'll appreciate your passion." To John's delight, the students were eager to learn. They asked thoughtful questions, engaged in lively debates, and even started bringing their own research to share with the group. One student, a shy girl named Emma, told John that his mentorship had inspired her to pursue a career in archaeology. "Thank you for believing in me," she said one day after a session. "I never thought I could do something like this, but you've shown me that it's possible." John was deeply moved by her words. "You're the one who's doing the hard work," he said. "I'm just here to guide you." Through his mentorship program, John found a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment. He realized that even in retirement, he could continue to make a positive impact on the lives of others. While John was busy mentoring students, Mary found her calling in supporting the local community through art. She started a free art workshop at the community center, where people of all ages could come together to explore their creativity. The workshop quickly became a popular gathering place, attracting children, teenagers, and seniors alike. Mary loved watching her participants discover the joy of painting, drawing, and crafting. She encouraged them to express themselves freely, reminding them that art wasn't about perfection, it was about connection and self-expression. One day, a young boy named Liam came to the workshop with his grandmother. He was quiet and withdrawn, but as he began to paint, his face lit up with excitement. By the end of the session, he proudly showed Mary his colorful masterpiece. "This is amazing, Liam," Mary said, beaming. "You have a real talent." Liam's grandmother smiled and said, "He's been struggling in school, but I think this is the first time I've seen him so happy and confident. Thank you for giving him this opportunity." Mary felt a surge of gratitude and pride. "It's moments like these that make it all worthwhile," she told John later that evening. In addition to her workshops, Mary organized art exhibitions to showcase the work of her participants. The exhibitions brought the community together, celebrating creativity and fostering a sense of pride and belonging. While John and Mary pursued their individual passions, they also found ways to give back as a team. They started volunteering at a local food bank, where they helped sort donations, pack food boxes, and distribute meals to families in need. The work was physically demanding at times, but it was also deeply rewarding. One day, as they handed out food to a young mother and her 2 children, the woman said, "Thank you so much. You don't know how much this means to us." John and Mary exchanged a glance, their hearts full. "We're just happy to help," Mary said, her voice warm with sincerity. Volunteering together strengthened their bond and reminded them of the power of teamwork. They found joy in knowing that they were making a difference, not just as individuals, but as partners. As John and Mary continued their efforts to give back, they discovered that the act of giving brought them as much joy and fulfillment as it did to those they helped. They formed new friendships, learned new skills, and gained a deeper appreciation for the resilience and generosity of the human spirit. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the stars, John said, "You know, I think you were right. The more we give, the more we receive." Mary smiled, her hand resting on his. "It's true," she said. "Giving back has made our lives so much richer." They reflected on all the ways their contributions had impacted their community. The students John had mentored, the artists Mary had inspired, the families they had supported through the food bank. Each act of kindness, no matter how small, had created ripples of positivity that spread far beyond what they could see. For John and Mary, giving back to the community wasn't just about helping others, it was about leaving a legacy of love and generosity. They hoped that their efforts would inspire others to do the same, creating a ripple effect of kindness that would continue long after they were gone. As they looked ahead to the future, they felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. They knew that through their contributions they had made the world a little brighter, a little kinder, and a little more connected. And as they held hands, watching the world around them, they felt a profound truth in their hearts. To give is to receive, and in giving, they had found the true meaning of life. As the years passed, John and Mary continued to embrace the beauty and challenges of their golden years with grace, gratitude, and love. Their journey had been one of growth, discovery, and connection, a testament to the power of resilience, curiosity, and the enduring strength of their bond. Together, they had built a life that was not only meaningful but also deeply fulfilling. And as they reflected on their journey, they realized that the key to a life well lived wasn't about avoiding challenges or chasing perfection. It was about finding joy in the little things, staying true to their values, and cherishing the people and moments that mattered most. John and Mary's home had always been a sanctuary, a place where love and laughter thrived. Over the years, it had become a reflection of their shared life. A cozy, welcoming space filled with memories, from the photographs on the walls to the well-worn furniture that had witnessed countless conversations, celebrations, and quiet moments of togetherness. Their garden, once a simple patch of grass, had blossomed into a vibrant oasis of flowers, vegetables, and fruit trees. It was a labor of love, a project they had nurtured together over the years. The garden wasn't just a source of beauty and sustenance. It was a symbol of their partnership, a reminder of what they could achieve when they worked together. On warm afternoons, they would sit on the porch, sipping tea and watching the world go by. Sometimes they talked about their dreams and memories. Other times, they simply enjoyed the silence, content in each other's company. Their home wasn't just a house, it was a testament to the life they had built together, a life rooted in love, respect, and shared purpose. One of the greatest joys of John and Mary's later years was watching their family grow. Their children, Michael and Emily, had built lives of their own, but they remained close to their parents, visiting often and sharing updates about their careers, families, and adventures. John and Mary took great pride in their children's accomplishments, knowing that they had played a part in shaping the kind, compassionate people they had become. When Michael and Emily brought their own children to visit, the house came alive with the sound of laughter and play. John loved telling his grandchildren stories about history and their family's past, while Mary delighted in teaching them how to paint and bake. These moments were a source of immense joy, a reminder that their love and values would live on through the generations. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Emily raised her glass in a toast. "To Mum and Dad," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for showing us what it means to live a life full of love, kindness, and purpose. You've given us so much to be grateful for." John and Mary exchanged a glance, their eyes glistening with tears. "We're the ones who are grateful," John said, "for all of you and for the life we've been blessed to share." As they grew older, John and Mary found themselves reflecting more often on the lessons they had learned throughout their lives. They had faced their share of challenges, health issues, moments of doubt, and the inevitable changes that come with aging, but they had always found a way to persevere, guided by their love for each other and their commitment to living fully. One of the most important lessons they had learned was the value of gratitude. Even on difficult days, they made a conscious effort to focus on the things they were thankful for: the beauty of a sunrise, the warmth of a hug, the joy of a shared meal. Gratitude, they realized, was the key to finding happiness in the present moment. They had also learned the importance of adaptability. Life didn't always go as planned, but they had discovered that the ability to embrace change and find new ways to thrive was essential to their well-being. Whether it was learning to navigate new technology, finding creative ways to stay active, or exploring new hobbies, they approached each challenge with an open mind and a willingness to grow. And perhaps most importantly, they had learned that love was the foundation of everything. Love for each other, love for their family, love for their community. It was the thread that connected every aspect of their lives, giving them strength, purpose, and joy. As John and Mary approached their later years, they decided to host a celebration of life, a gathering of friends, family, and neighbors to honor the journey they had shared and the connections they had built. The event was held in their garden, which was in full bloom, a vibrant backdrop for the occasion. The celebration was a reflection of who they were: simple, heartfelt, and filled with love. There were speeches and stories, laughter and tears, music and dancing. John and Mary took the time to thank everyone who had been a part of their lives, expressing their gratitude for the love and support they had received over the years. At one point, Michael stood up to speak. "Mom and Dad," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "You've taught us so much about what it means to live a good life. You've shown us the importance of kindness, resilience, and staying true to what matters most. We're so proud to be your children, and we're so grateful for the example you've set." As the evening drew to a close, John and Mary stood hand in hand, looking out at the faces of the people they loved. In that moment, they felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Their lives had been far from perfect, but they had been rich in the ways that mattered most. In the quiet moments that followed the celebration, John and Mary sat together on the porch watching the stars. The night was calm, the air filled with the scent of flowers and the distant hum of laughter from their guests. "You know," John said, his voice soft, "I think we've done all right." Mary smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We've done more than all right," she said. "We've lived a good life, a full life, and I wouldn't change a thing." As they sat there reflecting on their journey, they felt a deep sense of gratitude for each other, for their family, for the community they had been a part of, and for the countless moments of joy and love that had filled their days. They knew that their time together wouldn't last forever, but they also knew that the legacy of their love would endure, carried forward by the people whose lives they had touched. For John and Mary, a life well lived wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about the relationships they had nurtured, the lessons they had learned, and the love they had shared. And as they looked up at the stars, hand in hand, they felt a quiet certainty in their hearts. They had lived a life that truly mattered. Thank all of you for taking the time to watch this video. Your support and interest mean the world to me and are the biggest motivation for me to keep creating and delivering better content. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like, comment or share. It really helps me know what you think. Once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.